YouTube, what the crap's going on? HeirofCarthage back, and I've got some more action coming to you from the US qualifiers of the Warhammer World Championship between SCORCHMUFFINZ and Stormtrooper. So there should be some good stuff. This is going to be some Druchii versus Empire action. I love me some Druchii. They are actually one of my favorite multiplayer factions, even though I'm sure they're not in the shining graces of all the most competitive players these days, but I sure like them. And right off the bat, we're going to get some action here. You all saw the armies loading in, but I'm just going to cover them quickly. For the Druchii, it's 4 units of Dread Spears, a couple of Hargoneth Executioners. There's some Feral Manticores over here. Morathi rolling around with the Beastmaster. I love, or sorry, the Master. I love this combination. Some people think the Master isn't worth it, and they may be right, but see, the Master here has the Guardian ability. I probably wouldn't have brought any other abilities on him other than Guardian, but what they've got here. And then Morathi's got Doom Bolt, I think, what is it, Power of Darkness, Pit of Shades, Mystifying Miasma. She's got a lot of spells. Typically for me, I don't bring much of Morathi. I use her mostly as a debuff, but, you know, occasionally the Pit of Shades, other stuff like that's worth it. A couple of Dark Riders here, and then some Shades over here. Shades are some nice units for the Dark Elves. I think their Arc of Fire can be, or sorry, they're not a 360 arc, my bad, but they double in melee well if you can get them into late game. That's where I meant to go with that one. It's the Corsair hand bows that have a 360 arc. There's a couple of Outriders here for the Empire. They've got Empire Knights on the way to support them. And then up front for the Empire, we have some Carl summoned his men, but he didn't summon himself because he's not here. It's off-brand Carl here with the General of the Empire. Non-name brand Carl. Some swordsmen and spearmen, including Sigmar's sons. There are some halberds in a second line, as well as more spears. 1 Demigryph Knight with halberds, and then we have some crossbows. And that is going to be the Empire army here. So, oh, there's a Light Wizard with Net of Amantok, and I believe it's the Time Warp. Could be wrong, though. Or, sorry, Light of Battle, which makes a unit unbreakable for a short period of time. Time Warp is the one that I'm more used to seeing. So, initially, we're going to get a quick engagement over here. Dark Riders are obviously going to get their butts handed to them by the Empire Knights. No doubt about it. This is a weight class difference in which the Dark Riders are not going to be enjoying life. I have to admit, though, the Dark Riders look really cool. Not that Empire Knights don't, but I like that purple, like kind of that dark purple vibe going on for the Dark Elves. It's very nice indeed. So yeah, the Empire Knights are going to get off to a good start over here. Morathi is going to come rolling in with the Master. Try and Doom Bolt these Empire Knights, though it doesn't end up doing much damage because they were on the move, but they do end up getting pinned here, and Morathi dumps a Pit of Shades on them. And that is going to hurt. Pit of Shades does nice armor-piercing damage, and it is going to really rip through the Empire Knights, which would have been losing terribly to Morathi and the Master anyway. I mean, those two are some pretty potent anti-large capability. We're going to see the Manticores come over as well. I do want to point out something real quick, which is very strange to me. I see people do this, and I don't really understand why, but you've got Morathi, and you spend the money on these extra spells that you may not need, but you didn't bring Heartrender and Dark Sword or Enchanting Beauty. For goodness sakes, bring those debuffs. But hey, I still like Morathi. She's still fun to play. She's not terrible, but without her debuffs, I don't find her to be near as good, obviously, because she can absolutely tar pit huge bunches of infantry. Speaking of infantry, we're going to see that fight come out here. Dread Spears will actually hold their own against Imperial troops pretty darn well because they have just pretty solid melee defense. Swordsmen obviously going to be a little better on the attack. Sigmar's sons will clearly be significantly better, but there are Hargoneth Executioners. You can see the Druchii just don't even respect the Empire in this infantry fight. Look at them just pulling all their infantry over here because they're like, yeah, whatever, Empire infantry, we'll get it later. Not very interested. So I think it's kind of interesting to see the disrespect on the Empire infantry, and it's not unexpected, and I don't think it's inappropriate either. I mean, it's just the Empire is not a huge threat in an infantry battle, typically speaking. We're going to see the General of the Empire gets himself buried over here. It does get a net to help out, which was actually very timely to save the General of the Empire, who was probably hoping to get in here and get a knockout blow on Morathi. And don't get me wrong, Morathi is way out of her league in this fight, but again, the army piercing and anti-large, she does a lot of damage. So you can't underestimate Morathi. And again, this is without her debuffs. And look at that, she ends up chasing off the General of the Empire without the debuffs. So imagine what that would have looked like if she had had them. So again, Marathi can be killed. She can be sniped fairly easy in certain circumstances. But if you get in the wrong melee fight with her, it can go south real quick. It's definitely something that you have to be careful of. Anyway, you can see her hiding back here a bit. The Manticores are going to push forward and go after the Light Wizard. The Empire doesn't really have a great way to protect against this. If the General of the Empire gets involved to try and stop this, he's going to die. I think at this point the Light Wizard should have just run, because it could have stayed ahead of the Druchii units here, and so it ends up dying, I think, a little needlessly. You have the Outriders firing in, and at this point there's nothing on the ground over here for the Executioners to engage. So you can see a unit of them are going to go ahead and turn around. I think they've been chasing the Empire Knights, trying to use their armor piercing to get through it. This Hargoneth Executioner got engaged in a very nice rear charge here, but it's going to take a lot more than that to usher these Hargoneth Executioners out of the fight. Demigryph Knights with halberds, their charge is good. It's not amazing, and they do armor piercing damage. Maybe 1 versus 3 right here, the Executioners get knocked out, but my guess is these guys are still going to be dishing out a lot of damage. And you can see here that the Demigryph Knights are going to get forced out of there because of the approaching Druchii reinforcements. See, the Shades here did a great job getting rid of the Outriders so that they can't pick apart the flyers for the Druchii. Another Pit of Shades coming in. Well played here. Going to get a lot of damage done versus these swords, but not a particularly high value target. But these Executioners needed some relief, and they got it because they had been getting picked on, outnumbered, that type of stuff. General of the Empire, or off-brand Carl here, gets caught, and he's going to get absolutely slaughtered by this Goon Squad. So that is going to be all she wrote for the General of the Empire. And at this point, it's going to be pretty much all she wrote for the Empire. The only unit they have that's pretty capable is the Demigryph Knights, and it's just not going to be able to overcome all the different Druchii units that are left. These Shades over here would have been a good target a little bit earlier for the Demigryph Knights because these are unprotected. The thing you'd have to be careful of, though, is only catching one Shade and the other just turns and unloads on you. You can see the Demigryph Knight is very interested in getting rid of this Executioner. And it looks like they're going to get it, finally, after a few cycle charges. It is a high-value target, yeah, the Executioner. So, can't say I totally blame the Empire for wanting to get rid of it. These Shades are absolutely taking a dump on the halberds over here. They have gotten a lot of kills each. And honestly, when they get into melee against this Imperial stuff late in the game, they're going to be more than capable in melee. They're going to get some kills. They've got some really solid melee attack. Okay-ish defense and not great weapon strength, but the melee attack is quite good, and they'll get some work done when they get in late. Now, Shades with dual weapons obviously would be even better, but they also cost more, so I can understand why they didn't want to invest in that. Now, though, the Shades have some problems. This is what I was talking about earlier. Kind of surprised that this hadn't happened sooner. Not a lot of ammo left for the Shades either, in case one of them doesn't get caught. It looks like they're on skirmish mode right now, though. A nice mystifying miasma, though, to delay this. Marathi's going to come in here and make the save, I think. It's a Pit of Shades that's going to follow up the mystifying miasma. That was very nicely played to get these Demigryph Knights off of the Shades and to assist Marathi in what would otherwise be a dangerous fight here. Swooping into some Demigryph Knights. Let's see what we got left over here from the infantry fight. Looks like the Executioners managed to clean up the crossbowmen, and there shouldn't be any infantry left that can contend with these units. The Dread Spears have done a good job of just lasting a long time. Yep, there goes the Demigryph Knights. They also got hit by a Doom and Darkness. Well, I'll say this for the Dark Elf player. I don't like to bring this many spells, but sometimes I see people bring a bunch of spells and then don't use them. This Dark Elf player has used every single one of the spells and abilities here. The Doom Bolt, the Power of Darkness, I mean, the Miasma, Pit of Shades, Doom and Darkness. So, I mean, it just nicely played. If you are going to bring the magic, use it well. And honestly, other than one missed Doom Bolt, I think the magic has been pretty spot on for the Dark Elves here. It's been pretty spot on. That's going to be it. Shattered the Empire. And we're going to get a win in this match by ScorchMufFINZ, who nicely played. Fun game from the Empire. We do still have Sigmar's Sons over here, which are an unbreakable unit. They're going to have to fight their way through all this. I'll give you a couple of quick close-up shots of Sigmar's sons getting absolutely crunched by Morathi, which is never a fun thing. I guess the good thing when it comes to Morathi is that whether you're her enemy or her lover, your treatment in the end is pretty much going to be the same. That's the true key for you. She treats them all just about equal. Alright, there we go. So Sigmar's sons get wrecked. I'm going to fast forward through this and let's go check out the stats on this battle. That one was a good one. I enjoyed this one. Again, I like the Dark Elves. They're one of my favorite factions. I like the Empire too. I like both these factions. And it's fun to see them both play. Obviously, Stormtrooper here didn't really have much to contend with the Goon Squad. He had these Outriders, but the Outriders got picked up really early in that ambush where both players had Vanguard deployed, and it definitely went south for the Empire there. It wasn't good. The reaction that they had to make to try and go save the Outriders just resulted in Empire Knights getting killed, so I'm sure that was not the start to the battle that the Empire was looking for. And these Outriders would have been one of the better answers to this Goon Squad. But at the same time, like, I don't really love what the Empire had here to try and get rid of that Goon Squad. It's going to be difficult. They did have the Demigryphs, who would need to be very close to any units on the ground, though, so that if these flyers landed, that they would get punished. And the Demigryph Knights just weren't there to punish these flyers, and so we ended up seeing a really solid performance out of Morathi, a decent performance out of the Master that was with her. You're not really going to see a lot of value on the Executioners here, just because they weren't up against any real expensive infantry, but look at the value and the numbers and the shades. That's very nice, actually, so very well played by ScorchMuffINZ. Now, these two players played a second match. Let's go take a look at it as well. So in the second match, they met up on Schwarzhofen, which I guess is one of Manfred's favorite places for a get-together. And ScorchMuffINZ is going to be bringing Volkmar the Grim. And yes, he does bring him properly on his altar of Sigmar, or whatever it is that he has there, that we all just affectionately call Volkmar's pimp wagon. So we've got 3 units of Hellstorm rocket batteries, which, I mean, I think he should just be given the prize to the tournament. For bringing 3 Hellstorm rocket batteries, I mean, that's like an auto win, in my opinion. You just win when you bring that many rockets. We've got 1 Greatsword behind them, 2 in front of them. Volkmar right here, he does have some of his abilities. Let's check those out so we know what he will bring to the battle. He's got Grand Soulfire, Grand Shield of Faith, the Grand Hammer of Sigmar, and his Banishment, and of course the Seed of Rebirth, which I think is some good equipment for him to have. There are a couple of units Outriders once again out here, and then this time some Huntsmen supporting, which interesting choice against the Dwarves for Huntsmen. But I guess the one thing that the Huntsmen would be good against would be Gyrocopters, and here they are. So interesting though, that maybe he just wanted the Huntsmen for the stalk ability, so could be, not really sure. You can see the rockets already knocking out some of the Dwarf artillery. It was a cannon. Though there's some grudge throwers and the Goblobber. Now, I love the Goblobber as an anti-artillery piece. I think that some people overlook it. It is extremely effective as an anti-artillery piece because it just destroys the leadership of any unit that it hits. Like, it really punishes the leadership. It helps to rout the artillery units much faster than they otherwise would rout. So you can see a nice trade here on the artillery, though. The Dawi is starting to pull it back between the grudge thrower and the Goblobber, and you can see the rockets now taking some pretty significant damage after having initially caused a lot of damage themselves. And one of the targets they would have loved to have been able to get a hold of, obviously, would be the Hammerers, but of course you can't target them until you're able to clear out some of the other stuff. We got the Dragonfire Pass, Dwarf Warriors there, some Thunderers, lots of good targets for the rockets, but you can see the Dwarf Artillery here, with the help of the Gyrocopters, able to do what it needs to. But here's the Outriders. We've also got the Huntsmen moving this way. The Gyrocopters are in big trouble. They need to get out of range, but I don't think they can really stay away from the Outriders. They're faster, but they're going to have to try hard to stay out of that range. And right now, they're not. So we're going to see the Dwarves actually moving forward here, which is a little strange because the Dwarves now have the ranged advantage for sure. But maybe they just want to go ahead and get the engagement underway. But I think that the artillery maybe... It's either moving forward to try and target some of these, or it was following one of the Hellstorm rocket batteries. If it was following the rocket battery, May have been intentional, but it also may have just been a result of not having clicked the defensive stance, which I think is pretty important to use with missile units unless you have a very good reason not to. I'm going to see an engagement start here with Longbeards coming into the cheaper Empire infantry, Dwarf warriors. These will be engagements that'll be okay for the dwarves. We do have 2 great swords here the dwarves will have to deal with. We've got Belagar Ironhammer as their leader, and they do have hammers though, so the dwarves will certainly be capable of dealing with the great swords relatively easy. At the moment, the Thunderers are a little far back. They don't have a lot of great targets, so I honestly kind of think it makes sense for them to kind of keep their distance here and try and pick at Volkmar whenever he gets close enough. No reason for him to get up and get in a position where they might end up in melee earlier than they want to be. So you can see the great swords actually got a little bit caught on some of this combat as they were coming through. I'm not sure that that's what the Empire player intended. And then an interesting choice here to just throw Belagar into the great swords. See how that goes, but I mean, if the Thunderers were to move up, or the artillery to take advantage of it, Belagar's got a nice blob created here where some guns or the artillery could really quickly and easily clean up greatsword unit. This can actually be a decent strategy if you've got the right missile units nearby. Blob an entire infantry unit on a single entity and then just waste the infantry unit. Oh, here comes the banishment. It was targeted on the hammers, but then it got canceled because the Grand Soulfire came in, I think. For whatever reason, it canceled it, but there was about to be a really nice banishment on the hammerers. The only downside is that, you know, you've got swordsmen fairly nearby, and the banishment's a little unpredictable. But it looks like it was canceled. Hopefully it didn't misfire. I've actually had that happen to me, not specifically on the banishment, but with some like breath abilities and stuff where it'll like straight up misfire and not go off at all. Here it comes. Looks like it was canceled. It took a chunk out of the hammers, and I think it was placed to be relatively safe because obviously you don't want that to backfire through your own infantry. So definitely helpful, and then with Volkmar up there supporting, it'll certainly help the great swords in that fight. Look at this, the Thunderers just absolutely unleashing a volley on the Outriders there. One of the rocket batteries did manage to come back from routing and open fire again. You can see it's now become an object of affection for the Goblobber and the Grudge Thrower, so it probably won't be long for this battlefield. I'm sure it'll be driven back relatively quick. Thunderers moving up now, maybe hoping to find some more targets. The Master Engineer as well. See the Huntsman getting some shots in on the Thunderers, and it looks like the Outriders moving that direction. But honestly, these units are kind of blobbed up here, and they're just gonna, the Thunderers are gonna just unleash. You got high armor and shields on Thunderers, and these units aren't gonna like that. Not to mention they're not gonna like getting hit by the Goblobber. See, look what it does to the leadership on this unit. It is brutal. Discouraged by ability, minus 16. So yeah, the Goblobber is absolutely brutal at helping to clean up stuff like this. Looks like the Hammerers ended up holding their own, no problem. They're actually about to pick up a Chevron. So they've been punching some pretty good value in this fight. And Belagar, honestly, for as long as he's been in this fight, did surprisingly well against the Greatswords. This is exactly what I was talking about right here. When a unit gets blobbed on a single entity, just mop it up, that missile unit. Because it doesn't take much. And we're going to see the Dwarves here pulling out a win over the Empire. Now, I think after our last discussion, we actually talked about Dwarves versus Empire not too long ago, speaking of, and there was a poll. And it was pretty close in the poll, but all the people I talked to who are pretty familiar with the more competitive side of Warhammer 2 feel like that the Dwarves own this matchup, and mostly because they own the artillery fights, and that the Empire doesn't really have a lot of great answers to their infantry. There is great swords, and they're okay, but they're not as good as like what some other factions have to offer, and so the Dwarves just own the ranged fight, and I guess that's what people feel like gives the Dwarves the advantage in this particular matchup, at least what most people seem to think. But yeah, the artillery advantage, in my opinion, definitely no question that would go to the Dwarves. See the Dragonback Slayers, they've got Volkmar pinned here. Got the Engineers shooting him relatively point blank. Thunderers now pouring in fire, so Volkmar is going to be seeing Sigmar quite soon. There he goes. And so these two players went 1-for-1 with each other. So ScorchMufFINZ won the first match, and Stormtrooper won the second match. I don't think people are playing more matches than that because these are qualifying rounds, so I think it's more like I don't know this for sure because I haven't gone to look up the tournament rules, but I'm assuming that it's going to be more similar to like the World Cup, for instance, where when you're in a group stage, you're really looking for points. You know what I mean? Like you're just trying to get the most points. But again, I could be wrong. I don't know for certain. But that was the 2 matches that were uploaded for these 2 players. And I thought it'd be fun because each player won one. And I kind of like the battles in both of them, having the Druki, having the Dawi, and the Empire out here. So some factions that I enjoy watching. So I figured you all would enjoy this one, seeing some of these qualifier rounds and just kind of checking out the players. But again, 3 rockets in a tournament. Give this guy the prize money. ScorchMufFINZ gets the prize money. That's the kind of play that I can identify with right there, bringing lots of guns. But I got to give the dwarves credits too, bringing in these thunders. I love some thunder units. They're absolutely fantastic. The Goblobber is also fantastic. I'm surprised not to have seen the Sunmaker in this army, because the Sunmaker is objectively just way better than a standard rocket battery, and especially if you're fighting a faction like the dwarves, where rockets are pretty good anyway. It's 9 chevrons, so it has better accuracy and reload, and then also it just fires twice as many rockets on top of that. So it is a unit that you really don't want to go to battle without, I think, if you're considering rockets. But hopefully y'all enjoyed this one. Appreciate y'all watching the video. I will have more coverage of the Warhammer World Championship. And I've got some exciting things coming your way. I got a little bit behind this week, like every week, I guess it feels like. The Grom campaign is going to be continuing. We have to go Confederate Grimgore, so that will be coming up soon. I have the Otomo campaign is ready to start now, so we will have a Shogun 2 campaign on the channel for the first time in who knows how many years. I'm super excited about that. Warner made me some artwork for the thumbnail. You are going to love it. I love it. So the Otomo campaign starts here very soon. And of course, we're going to keep covering the Warhammer World Championship. I streamed Age of Empires 3 Definitive Edition earlier this week. The video on demand is up. You should go watch it. We had a really awesome multiplayer battle. It was 2v2. It was a ton of fun. And then we also did kind of a 4v4 player versus computer, kind of just a fun stomp battle at the end of it. So you should go check that out too. This next week on Thursday, I'm going to be streaming Warhammer Vermintide. I've never played the game before, so I've got some folks from the Discord that I'm going to learn how to play it. So that one should be kind of fun, just for something different. Of course, we'll do our multiplayer battles on Tuesday, so it should be an exciting week is what I'm saying. Stick around. We got some awesome content coming up, and I want you all to see it, and I hope you enjoy it. I'm excited to make it for you. Anyway, HeirofCarthage signing out for now. Hope to see you soon.